On page 5, notice we're switching from distance to ratio. And when we do a ratio, that doesn't mean we're in a distance of 2 to 1, because that doesn't make sense. Because you can't have 2 parts and then to 1 part as distance. But we can have a ratio of 2 to 1. So by guessing, I'm going to say x is over here someplace. I don't know where. I'm going to find that out. But it's going to be in the ratio of 2 to 1. It means I have two parts to the left of x, 1 part to the right of x. So my total parts are going to be 3. So my distance, in other words, I have to add another step in here when I'm given a ratio, is actually 2/3. So x is 2/3 of the way from m to n. So now let's go through our x distance like we've done before. I look at my x coordinates. I'm going from -3 to +4, so that's going to give me a total of 7 units. I'm going to find 2/3 of those. So 2/3 of 7 is going to, it's not right in here, is going to be 14/3. Or if I think of that with like 3 and something. But remember, I'm starting at -3. I'm going to add 14/3. Well, that's going to be 3 times 3 is -9 plus 14/3. -9/3 plus 14/3. That will give me 5/3. So my x coordinate is going to be at 5/3 or 1 2/3 if I try to graph that. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to erase this. And I'm going to say, oh, my x coordinate is going to be over here at 1 2/3 or 5/3. Then I'm going to do the same thing for my y distance. So my y goes from -2 to 6, so that's a total of 8, isn't it? So 8, I'm going to take 2/3 of 8. 3 does not go into 8, so I get 16/3. So I'm going to start here at -2. I'm going to add 16/3. And common denominator 3. 3 times 2 is 6. I'm going -6 plus 16. That will be 10/3. So my coordinate is going to be at 5/3 and 10/3. And that will be the answer to that question. On question 16, we're going to find the midpoint of a midpoint. So first off, I'm going to find C is the midpoint of A and B. So in other words, I'll take -4 plus 6 over 2 and -5 plus 11 over 2. Well, -4 plus 6 is 2 over 2. -5 plus 11 is 6 over 2. So in other words, the coordinate of point C is going to be at 1 and 3. So I'll go 1 and 3. I found that algebraically. Let's find point B geometrically. So now to find point B, I just look at, well, I think I'll do this algebraically too. I think it's easier. So to find the coordinate of B, B is the midpoint of A, C. So I'm going to say -4 plus 1 all over 2 and -5 plus 3 all over 2. So -4 plus 1 is -3 over 2. -5 plus 3 is -2 over 2. Simplify that a little bit more. -3 halves, you can write it as -1.5 if you want, and -1. So the coordinate of point B is at -3 halves and -1. I don't care if you write it as a fraction or a decimal, but in advanced math, we always write it as rational numbers. So I'm never going to write it as a decimal unless I'm told to.